At some point, you have been completely unable to think about anything else, not because something was wrong, because someone existed, someone specific, whose presence rearranged the background priorities of your entire day without asking permission, whose absence from a room you noticed before you noticed anything else about the room, whose name appearing on your phone produced a physiological response you could feel before you'd consciously registered what you were seeing. You called it falling in love, which is a phrase that contains, buried inside it, the essential truth of the experience. That it happened to you, not because of you, that you didn't choose it, that it arrived and the arrival changed something, and you were not the same on the other side of it as you were before. This is not a feeling, or rather, it is not only a feeling, it is a neurological event, a specific, measurable, reproducible cascade of brain activity and chemical release that cognitive evolution built into the human system for reasons that have nothing to do with romance and everything to do with survival. Love, in the biological sense, is a solution to a problem, the most expensive reproductive problem any mammal has ever had to solve. And understanding what that problem was and how love solves it changes what love means, not by making it smaller, but by making it stranger and more remarkable than the feeling alone would suggest. Start with the problem. Human infants are the most helpless newborns of any primate. A newborn chimpanzee can grip its mother within hours of birth. A foal stands within minutes. A human infant cannot hold its own head up, cannot regulate its own temperature, cannot feed itself, cannot move toward food, cannot do almost anything that survival requires for months, and remains fundamentally dependent on adult care for years. This is the direct consequence of the human brain size. The skull that houses a brain capable of language, planning, and symbolic thought cannot pass through the birth canal if the brain is fully developed. So human babies are born early, relative to their developmental stage, and complete outside the womb what other primates complete inside it. The result is a creature that requires more sustained, intensive, biparental care than almost any other animal on Earth. Two parents staying together, investing consistently over years, dramatically increases infant survival. One parent alone is significantly less effective. The problem cognitive evolution had to solve was, how do you keep two adults with competing individual interests bound to each other and to a helpless infant long enough for that infant to survive? The answer was love, not as a cultural invention or a social construct, as a biological mechanism, a specific neurological system involving oxytocin, vasopressin, dopamine, and norepinephrine that produces the behavioral and psychological effects we recognize as romantic attachment. The preoccupation with a specific individual, the motivation to maintain proximity, the distress at separation, the prioritization of another person's well-being alongside or sometimes above your own. This system doesn't operate through conscious decision. It operates through the same limbic structures that regulate hunger and fear. Ancient, automatic, beneath the level of deliberate choice. You don't decide to fall in love any more than you decide to be hungry. The system activates and the behavior follows. The neurochemistry is specific and well documented. Early romantic love produces elevated dopamine, the brain's primary reward and motivation signal, in patterns that researchers have compared to the neurological profile of addiction. The beloved becomes neurologically a reward the brain organizes significant motivation around obtaining. Norepinephrine produces the heightened attention, the racing heart, the intrusive thoughts, the feeling that the system is running at elevated intensity. Cortisol rises, producing a mild stress response that keeps arousal high. And serotonin levels drop significantly in ways that mirror the neurochemistry of obsessive-compulsive disorder. The intrusive, repetitive thinking about a specific person that characterizes early love is not metaphorically similar to obsession. It is neurologically the same mechanism applied to a different object. Cognitive evolution repurposed an existing system, the one that generates compulsive, repetitive attention to things the brain has marked as critically important, and applied it to another person, because having another person marked as critically important in the specific way that drives sustained sustained proximity seeking and investment is exactly what biparental care requires. Here is what makes this more interesting than simple pair bonding. Humans don't just bond, they bond selectively, intensely, and specifically to one person in a way that makes other people neurologically less interesting by comparison. This selectivity is not universal among pair bonding animals. Many species that form long-term pair bonds do so with whatever suitable mate is available. The human system produces something more specific, the sense that this particular person is irreplaceable, that the bond is not simply functional but constitutive, that the loss of this specific individual would be qualitatively different from any substitution. That specificity, the feeling that it has to be this person, is the cognitive evolution layer. It is what theory of mind adds to pair bonding. The ability to model a specific other person's inner life in such detail, to understand their particular way of being in the world so precisely that the model itself becomes a source of attachment. You don't just love a person, you love your model of them. The specific accumulated understanding of how they think and feel and respond that you've built through proximity and attention and time. This is why love doesn't fade evenly. It deepens with understanding and fractures with betrayal of the model. When someone acts in a way that reveals the model was wrong, the attachment destabilizes not because the behavior was necessarily catastrophic, but because it undermines the cognitive structure the attachment is built on. And it's why long relationships can produce a form of love qualitatively different from early romantic love. Less driven by the dopamine norepinephrine cascade of novelty, more built on the accumulated, specific, irreplaceable model of another mind that years of proximity constructs. The neuroscience of long-term love looks less like addiction and more like the brain regions associated with calm, deep attachment, including areas associated with the suppression of social judgment and the production of empathy. The brain, in long-term love, has essentially turned down its critical evaluation of the beloved and turned up its capacity to feel what they feel. This is not a reduction of love. It is its maturation. Your ancestors fell in love, not with the vocabulary, not with the cultural scaffolding, not with the poetry, but with the same neurological system, producing the same cascade, binding them to specific individuals in ways that serve survival at the most fundamental level. The infant that survived was the one with two parents who couldn't stop thinking about each other and about it. The attachment that felt like it had to be this person, no one else, forever. That feeling was the mechanism that kept the parents present long enough for something helpless to become something that could survive. Love is not a distraction from survival. Love is one of the most sophisticated survival tools cognitive evolution ever produced. It just doesn't feel like a tool. It feels like everything. And maybe that's the point. A survival mechanism that felt like a calculation would be easy to override. A survival mechanism that feels like the most important thing that has ever happened to you. That reorganizes your priorities without asking. That makes another person's existence feel necessary in a way nothing else does. That mechanism is much harder to walk away from. Cognitive evolution didn't make humans fall in love because it was beautiful. It made humans fall in love because it worked. The beauty, it turns out, was included